Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is BUSA 6621 Executive Perspectives in Leadership, and this is Dr. Hurd. I'm glad that you're joining me today because we have a very special guest for you. We have Christopher White, and I've known Christopher for a few years, and we're going to be talking about strategic perspective and big picture thinking today. Hi, Christopher.
Hi, Debbie. How are you? Dr.
I
Hurd.
am well. It's all good. Debbie or Dr. Hurd will work, I promise. It's good to see you, and I'm so glad that you accepted our invitation to talk to students today because this topic is so important. But before we get into that, tell the students a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, I currently own and I guess operate both a store and a restaurant concept in far North Dallas. My background has always been retail. I say I was kind of born to it because my grandfather worked for Strawbridge and Clothier, and my grandmother worked for Saks Fifth Avenue, and my mom worked for a different retailer. So it's kind of like I couldn't get out of it to save my life. So it just kind of progressed that I started out with Macy's South Bullocks in Atlanta after graduating at Georgia Tech and just moved through a lot of different retailers. I met you when I came on board at J.C. Penney, and there was product development and global packaging was the last area that I had, which was crazy 33 brands, a $60 million business with an average unit cost of like less than a penny,
Wow.
labels and pins.
Wow.
So anyway, about 8 years ago, I made the decision to buy a gift shop from the owners that were running a cafe. We did not buy the cafe, we just did the gift shop. And then about a year ago, or 3 years ago, we moved it. And then a year ago, we opened our own restaurant.
That is quite an endeavor. And what a wonderful life journey when you think about your legacy with your parents and more in retail, and then you went on to be, global product strategist and more, and now applying that directly in a business owner situation. So I commend you. That takes a lot of courage, Christopher.
I think now looking in hindsight, it was courage. I think I was a little naive, just saying, no, just do whatever, do what it takes to get through the day.
So you've seen it all from the very large enterprise to the business owner details. And I wanted to talk to you about that because many times leaders and executives get trapped into operational details and they fail to step back to think strategically. And I think in those decisions that you've had to make around, leaving a big corporate job to how do I open up something that is your own, you've had to think strategically. So you had to perhaps leave some assumptions back, like leave them behind, and also think about the long-term implications of what you're doing. So I want to go there, Christopher. How have you had to step back from the day to day to think strategically? How do you do that?
Yeah, I would say that it is difficult because you're kind of the chief cook and bottle washer. You kind of theoretically have all of the components. And it's hard because, like, if you pick up one and kind of stick with it or dive deep with it, other priorities kind of fall down. And it's really hard to keep all the momentum going. So you kind of pick, and hopefully enough projects get inertia that they kind of, or their own momentum. A friend of mine did a whole series on this concept of momentum. And from there, you just kind of continue to pivot, check, and move to the next thing. It is the trap of getting pulled too far down into the weeds of something. The only byproduct that's actually good sometimes is the nuances of some of those things stick with you and you apply them back up the hill. I'll give you a great example where we were looking at putting a key item into the store. And I was really working with the product, and I kind of recognized that this was not going to be as a giftable. It took a little bit more effort and work than just a simple gift. So I changed the kind of the selling point, the speaking point to the staff and everything, and we moved it over to self-consumption. It was, oh, this is great, but once we really start working with it, it was so much easier to sell into self-consumption. And I wouldn't have done it had I not been working the product, even though it was like late at night and I was like tired. I was like, okay. But you have to learn how far to go with certain things that give you benefit and then move on and to propagate them. You gotta
Mhm.
share what you learn with the team.
I like how you said that, seeing it, working with the details so that they apply uphill. And I think
Hmm.
many executives fail to do that. They're not sometimes getting enough information so that they can apply it uphill. And then they're making assumptions about how things work. And that's not how it works at all.
Yeah.
So that leads me into what helps you challenge your own assumptions. You've had a ton of retail experience in,
Yeah.
in the US company, but also as you sourced globally and more. What helps you challenge your own assumptions and help you broaden your perspective?
Um, think it's engaging with peer groups when you're traveling, when you're at conferences. It's kind of sad that sometimes the travel has come down because we can do so much virtually. But there's a lot of very interesting nuances and things you learn when you get to sit across from somebody and kind of explore and watch how they're working with product or they're working through the scenario. Costing, if you're trying to figure out how to get something to cost down, but you don't want to kill a product, it really takes a lot more to kind of do that. And it's not as easy to do it virtually because you're not touching the same thing. I find that that's key is that you've got to be in front of people where you can talk through what you're thinking and then wait for some of the feedback, some of the pieces to start playing out. And then you can kind of say, well, what if we put that solution with this? And that's kind of how I try to stay open.
I love that. And I think it's really comes down to, are you open to talking to others, learning from others, and sharing with others, those peer groups and more, to say, I don't know everything. I may
Right.
have a ton of experience, but there's still more to learn. And if you're open to that, that's how you broaden those perspectives. So I agree with you. Thank you.
I think when I was
Mhm.
younger, I think it was harder.
Oh, really?
I do. I think when I was younger, and again, this is maybe it was the sign of the times, maybe it was the 80s going into the 90s or whatever it was. But, if you were a young executive, you had to kind of come across like, yeah, you knew it.
Hmm.
I mean, I hate to say it, but, you had to have that kind of machismo, I know it all,
Right.
and sometimes you didn't. And I remember kind of being called on it about formulations of a candle, and I was like, whatever. And of course, whatever was, ooh, I lost this. I was not as smart as
Right.
I projected I was. So yeah, I guess it's a growing thing where you learn to ask the right
Right.
questions versus you don't have to be the smartest one in the room.
Right. And in this class, one of the very first assessments that we do is just self-awareness. Are you aware enough to know what you don't know? And are you mature enough to acknowledge that to other people? Because it's not going to put you in a kind of unfavorable spot. In fact, people love knowing that you don't know everything. They
Yeah.
appreciate someone being vulnerable. But gosh, Christopher, that's a hard lesson to learn. It's hard to
Hmm.
remember when you want to show up so strong. So I
Yeah.
hear you. So you make a lot of decisions. I
Mhm.
mean, being a business owner and knowing what you make a lot of decisions all of the time. How do you make sure that those decisions are aligned to your longer term goals, your business goals, your life goals? How do you make that happen?
Well, that's it. It's an interesting question because I think about decisions we make and like the impact that they individually make and kind of like the ROI of a question. And I often will want to answer the question very directly and quickly. I may or may not always be right. I think through a few of the what ifs and scenarios of it. But my bigger fear and where I've seen it go worse is not making the decision, waiting and kind of overanalyzing or just the lack of speed on some of these things can be worse than a bad decision.
I think what I know about you, Christopher, is you haven't always been so brave to fail and fail fast and learn from it and move on to the next decision.
Yeah.
You've also, for me, have had this kind of crystal clear perspective about what you want. And you knew what made you happy.
Hmm.
And that for me kind of just like more people need to be like Christopher in that regard. Know what makes them happy, know where their
Yeah.
talents are. And you know, when you make a decision, what I heard you say was it's easier for you. You make them fast because you're so centered. So, how would you ask these students to do the same? Like how do they get there like you?
Well, I think you have to kind of, find the role model and literature, TV,
Hmm.
movies, great characters exist, especially around leadership and making decisions. Now I realize it's scripted. They probably take 27 to deliver the ultimate whatever. But the thought process of what the character is supposed to be doing in real time is think of consequences. Think of
Mm,
yes, no, at least the byproducts will be, and then put it into motion. And I feel I've always kind of looked at things, it's kind of like, what do you think? What do you think? Yeah.
right,
And, usually I ask what some people think because I kind of think I know where they're going to go with it. And I need to hear it to know if I wouldn't do it. It's like you got to hear the confirmation of, well, we could do that, but then you can bring up, but how that means this, and we don't want to do that. And it's like I'm killing the idea, like almost like publicly, so that I don't do it.
right.
And it's tough having people around you that are willing to kind of be those kind of foils, but it's a very good process.
Yes, I agree. And finding that person who'll do that or finding a safe environment that you feel good, like I can make that happen is so important. If you
Yeah.
had to think about it, what really gets in the way of thinking in a big picture way, Christopher? Now, I ask that because sometimes as a business owner, you're very, again, caught up in the detail or that daily sale.
Mhm.
How do you how do you do that? And what do you recommend for the students as this last question? What gets in the way of a big picture perspective?
Yeah. Now, when you actually in during the sale, um, I think that there are some things that are time consuming in your tactics of doing your job that prevent the strategic thinking. So again, it's the ability to do a tactic, put it aside or complete it or assign it to somebody. There are some things that I'm just not fast about. It's just not my gig. And so I have to recognize those aspects of the role and say, hey, can you do this, that, and the other? And that way, now it's going to keep moving by somebody that's good at it versus somebody that is challenged by it. And I can then flip it to reviewing the catalog and adding up the open to buy to make sure we're not spending too much money that month or whatever it may be.
Thank you. I also heard in that, Christopher, do the things that only you can do.
Yes.
No, and there are definitely things that you are doing very, very well. Thank you. Thanks for sharing because I know your life is really busy. You own a business and that has a million and one different details that go with it. And yet, so successfully driving through the strategic portion of that. So thank you. It was a delight talking with you today.
Always good to talk to you. If anyone is in far north Dallas, please stop by. We're open. The store's 6 days a week. The restaurant's 5 days a week.
Christopher, give him the name of your place.
Sure. So the store is called Lekka, L-E-K-K-A, Retail Concepts, and we did that because it was the retail portion of Lekka Cafe. Lekka has the root term that was South African, meaning tasty and wonderful. It
Oh,
actually was a colonial term that came down from the Dutch. And then the restaurant is Palate by LRC, and it's about the artist palate and your taste palette.
very nice. I hope everyone gets to go. Thank you
Yes.
again. And to everyone on the call listening, have a great day. Thank you, Christopher.